Hey, happy Sunday to you all. My name is Brittany Lewis, and I am a artist, graphic designer, and tarot deck enthusiast. And this week I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is going to be it's going to crack a little bit. But we will power through. Sundays is the day that I take just special time to work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now, before we get into it's cracking really tough. Before we get into this live stream, just a few things. If you like this stream, if you would like to support me as an artist, if you would like to just show your support in general, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Number one is to like the live stream. That helps me out a whole lot. That lets YouTube know that you appreciate the stream, you appreciate the content, and you think other people will enjoy it as well. A second way that you can help out this live stream, especially this project, is to visit my website, blewisarts.com, where you can purchase anything from t-shirts to canvas prints to ebooks and all of the great little things and tidbits. And all of that will be linked down in the description. And if you are new, there will be an opportunity to get free shipping on your first item. Now, when it comes to my shop right now, we're only selling t-shirts, canvas prints, and ebooks, but I do have smaller prints, and I've been going back and forth between adding them back to the shop or not. Last week we were at the Memphis Comic Expo, so I know a lot of times when people meet me in person, they're used to seeing a certain size print and a certain type of artwork. So I am considering adding those things back to the shop. So if there's something that you're interested in, be sure to let me know. That'll kind of give me a little bit of confirmation as to whether or not to make that happen. So without further ado, let's get into this live stream. Woo, I'm going to try not to sniff too tough into the mic. I know, again, my voice is cracking quite a bit today, but I think we'll be okay. So, because I've been sick all week, I have not spent any time working on the Two of Wands. So we're just going to pick back up at the Two of Wands where we left off the week before last. And shout out to PL. How you doing, PL? I'm so happy to see you here. I'm really glad to have you all here. So yeah, we're going to be working on the Two of Wands this week. I've not worked on this card all week because I've been pretty much in bed trying to rest up and get better. And also the week before last, I spent a lot of time working towards the Memphis Comic Expo. So I know I met a lot of you guys there. And if you stop by my table just to chat, just to shoot the breeze, if you bought something, if you just walked by and smiled at me, I appreciate you for just stopping by. I really enjoy the Memphis Comic Expo. It's probably one of my favorite in-person events. It's always a fun time. It really is an opportunity for me to get to meet you guys and to sort of get into a slightly different space than, being at home and working all day. And I used to do comic conventions quite frequently where I would do about 4 or 5 a year. But lately, I guess since COVID, it slowed down pretty significantly. So if I don't do any other event, I usually do the Memphis Comic Expo. So if you were there last week and I met you last week, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciated meeting you, and I look forward to see you next year. All right. So for those of you who are also new here, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm currently working in Clip Studio Paint. Clip Studio Paint is the digital illustration program of choice, my choice. There are tons of options out there for people who are getting into digital illustration and, just sort of getting into that realm. Clip Studio Paint is just the program that I decided to switch over to when moving from Photoshop because I began my digital illustration path in Photoshop, and it was just the quickest and easiest transition. There were a few things that I had to kind of get accustomed to, but I really, really enjoy it. Now, Clip Studio is a very robust program. It is one of those programs where you can do animations, you can do comic books, you can do children's books, layouts and storyboards and all kinds of things are available to you within Clip Studio. And because of that, I'm no expert in Clip Studio. I do what I know how to do. I guess I do what I need to do within the program. And that's about it. So for the most part, most of what I do is digital illustration. On the occasion that I have a comic book or a children's book or something like that, where there are pages and multiple, parts to the story, then I will use it in a slightly different capacity. But for right now, we are just using regular old Clip Studio Paint. And again, I'll say this again because I know a few people came in and have not worked on this picture in the last 2 weeks. So we're going to pick back up where we left off. So I think the goal, because again, I'm not feeling too well today, the goal is going to be to just kind of fix our male character's face. So I don't know if it's going to be a long live stream. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but we're going to work on his face a little bit. And if we have time, I will probably move over to the female character's face. And that's going to be my main objective for today's live stream. So, again, I know we have a few people who are, this is probably your first live stream. So, before we begin, if you're watching this live or you're watching the replay, I really appreciate you for being here because you could be doing anything this Sunday afternoon, but you chose to sit here with me while my voice is cracking and going in and out. But I do, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you all for being here. So, okay, all right, here we go. So now the two of wands is the card we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. On our first episode of this particular card series, we worked on tightening up the sketch and placing the wands in the scene because I had pretty much had the idea of what I wanted to do. I had sort of a bare bones look at the poses that I, wanted to go with to tell this story. But I didn't really know where to put the wands, and I also I just didn't have a completed sketch, right? So that was episode 1. Episode 2, we did our flat layers. Flats are just your basic colors. For instance, she has a brown head, a purple shirt, a blue shirt, brown bookcase, that kind of thing. Those were flats. On our last episode, which was the week before last, I don't remember what I was talking about. I know we were talking a lot, so I didn't get a whole lot done. But we did start working on the character's face. Now, the Two of Wands is all about planning. It's all about sort of, and so that was pretty much the story that I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell the story of someone planning in the scene, and I wanted this to be akin to our Hierophant card. So I used the same color palette or a similar color palette from the Hierophant to sort of expand that world, and that's one of the ways that I've been able to have consistency within the pieces. And so we're just going to keep going. So now again, this is my main reference, right? So we have 3 people in this scene, and we have a guy sort of pointing at blueprints. From here, I decided to illustrate, or first of all, remove one of the people because I didn't need 3 people in this scene, and I wanted to change the gender of one of the people. So I made, instead of an older guy, I made it a woman. She's planning this scene out. The wands are on the table, and again, they're in sort of a library situation. All right. All right, so from here, we're going to be using the information that I have in this particular reference, specifically with our characters, to flesh out the face of the character that we have. Now, again, I hadn't looked at this in a while, and already I can see that it definitely is some room for improvement. And that's sort of one of the things that I really enjoy about doing these live is because you guys get to kind of see the slow building process. If I'm working on this on my own, it's I can tell you what I'm doing, right? I can explain it to you, but to allow you guys to see to see and sort of get a inside glimpse of my thought processes and why I made certain decisions and things like that, I think is invaluable. So already I'm having a little bit of trouble where I was painting on a layer that I labeled man skin, and the layers panel is going to be the panel right above my head. And what ended up happening was that I painted and it went underneath something that lets me know that I was probably working on my hair hair layer, which is right above it. And that's not necessarily the layer we want to work on, but because that's sort of how I have it established, we're gonna pick back up there, and then we'll get to moving. So when you're using references such as this one, you don't necessarily want to copy the exact reference, right? You want to find bits and pieces from the reference that you can use, and to tell a story. But unless you're studying now, and I say this quite a bit because if you're studying, then for sure you want to copy the references to learn about lighting and composition and things like that. But if you're making some artwork such as this, where I am wanting to tell a story, and if at some point we'll be copywriting all of these images, I don't necessarily want to copy a reference right out. Now there are a couple of pieces in this deck, especially some of the early pieces where that was a thing that I got dangerously close to doing, but it is something that we have since picked up or changed quite a bit. Just under the implications of copying copyright written work. But what you can do is use things like posing and use things like the lighting and hand placement and color palettes and things like that within your references. So even though this is also a man, that we're working on, and the reference image is also, a man, a male figure. I don't want to draw the exact same guy. This guy didn't give me permission to draw him. you know, that's sort of how it works. So you have to be very careful about choosing references. Now, when it does come to choosing a reference, there are websites such as Pexels, which is one that I highly recommend if you are into digital illustration, just sort of, even if you're into graphic design, just different things like that. If you're a business owner, if you're, looking for images that you can use with proper licensing that's free, Pexels is the website that I would highly recommend doing that. And the reason is because Pexels is a royalty free company, and there's lots and lots and lots of imagery that different photographers donate to the site, to the platform, in order for people like myself, people like you, can use without there being any negative repercussions for using them. So you want to be careful about that. Pexels again is my number one website for references. If I can't find it on reference on Pixels, then I expand my horizons quite a bit. If I'm not photographing myself in these particular scenes, you guys haven't seen that yet, but one of these days I'll sort of show you what that looks like. But reference is very important. I know a lot of people tend to look down on reference. A lot of people really that don't know a whole lot about how art is created or should be created. A lot of people have a lot of big opinions without sort of experience in the field, right? But reference is very important. Now, I am someone who's been an artist my entire life, right? I've drawn and created my entire life, but I find that when I have a really great reference, my artwork comes out really nice, right? Now, there are certain things that I can draw from imagination. Faces is one of those things, but that's because I've had lots and lots of practice drawing from reference. So references are clutch. It's something that I don't want you guys that are getting into digital art. I don't want you to shy away from or feel like you can't use because some random person on the internet said that it's a bad idea. Um, that's nonsense. Reference has been used since the dawn of time. That's sort of how things are created, right? If you go back and look at some of the old masters' work, they would have people pose for them, and that's a reference. So it's just a matter of how you use your references, right? Now, there's an artist, I don't know his name, but there is an artist who I really, really enjoy. He does these oil paintings of people where he poses them himself and he wraps their faces in flowers. And you can tell the difference between the way that his art looks because he's, posing his characters and he's actually using it live models for his references versus someone who might be using their imagination, right? So, yes, you can look for reference in different places, and I'm often looking for references myself, constantly on the lookout for references to paint and paint and study from. But you can also pose, and you can also create your own reference database, and that is something that I would encourage doing. So yeah, we're painting from reference. Now, when it comes to digital painting, I know a lot of people who get into the field early on are going to be obsessed with brushes. I was the same way when I worked in Photoshop. The majority of the time I would be, especially when I was learning digital painting, I was really, really obsessed with, oh, I wonder how did they get that texture? How can I get those brushes? And I had a massive brush collection. But what I found is that as I grow as an artist, I really only stick to a couple of brushes. I have a dry brush for texture. I have a regular round brush that's called a hotline. And then you'll see the names of those sort of here right above the layers panel. There is a brush called Hotline that I got from the artist Eric Anthony, who has a huge brush collection. So I use a lot of his brushes and pencils and pens and things like that as I work. But I mostly just use Hotline. If I want some texture, I'll go to my dry brush. And from that, I use opaque. There's just a generic dry brush called opaque 2. And then if I want to add extra texture while I'm moving color around without necessarily changing the color, I'll go and use a smudge brush. And this also comes from Eric Anthony, and it's called Smudgy. So you don't really have to have a huge arsenal of brushes or anything like that. I know that brushes are fun, and you can really get some really nice textures and really good shortcuts when it comes to different brushes. I use quite a few of them on our two of swords, where instead of painting each individual plant that we had, I had plant brushes that sort of helped lessen the amount of time that I was investing into, you know, painting bushes and things like that. So they come clutch, right? But you don't necessarily need 1,001 brushes in order to get sort of, different textures in order to tell your story with your artwork. Now, as I have gotten sort of more advanced in my digital art career, I'm actually more obsessed with having texture in my pieces. And I want to show you guys one that I had worked on the week before last. It was the Barry Sunday piece, the for Dia de Muertos. And I'm going to show you some of the texture that I was able to achieve in this piece as soon as we get to autosave. And it may take a minute for it to load up because it's a huge file. But one thing that I like about Clip Studio Paint is it does autosave. So that's very, very nice, because there have been many, many times when I was working in Photoshop as my digital illustration program where that bad boy would crash on me. Do you hear me? And that is no fun. So I'm going to show you just sort of some of the texture that I was able to get in this particular portrait. As soon as it loads, again, it might take a minute because it is a pretty large file. But portraits are one of the things that I absolutely, absolutely love to paint. Okay. It's like my favorite thing in the world, especially when I have a really good reference, right? References, again, are key. So if somebody's contacted me to do a portrait, a lot of times people just don't know, they're sending me the screenshots with like selfies or old photographs and things like that. But the clearer a picture is, the easier it is for me to articulate and for me to paint. In this particular one, I actually took the picture for it. The original reference image did not include like the top hat or the makeup or anything like that, but it did include the vest and the button-up shirt. And so I was able to take that and then turn it into this portrait that I want you guys to see, because I love this picture. It's one of my favorites. It was one that I did an all-nighter on. I think it took me about 5 hours to complete, but I want to show you guys some of the texture. All right. So if we're zooming in here, right, it looks like, and then this is, okay, disclaimer, right? Here's something that I will say. When it comes to my artwork, I'm always enjoying the process of creating. But one of the funny things about me is that I'll find pieces of my pieces that I thoroughly enjoy, right? So this part right here, where it's like it looks like the makeup is peeling off of his lip, is like my favorite part of this whole picture. But this was done with the opaque brush, right? It was done with the opaque brush. Some of the details in the nose and in the eyes and things like that was just done with a regular old round brush. So I didn't have anything fancy when it came to doing this. There was a look that I was going for because this is face paint. I wanted it to have that texture to it. Excuse me. And because of that, I was able to sort of make it happen with pretty much the bare minimum. Even when it came to like his tie and creating the texture within his tie and in his vest and things like that. All of this was done with the help of three brushes. I'm going to say it was the opaque brush, and I'll show you what that looks like. Let's see. I'll show you sort of what the texture of that looks like. So this is the opaque brush, right? So you have this sort of chalky look to it, right? And then I also had the hotline brush, which has a little more of a solid look to it. And then if I wanted to blend the colors, or if I wanted to sort of move things around, I would use the smudge brush, which allows me to sort of move things around, but it also adds texture to the image. And so that was one of the some of three of the tools that I used to create this picture, along with, of course, a great solid reference. So references are so important. Now, again, I'll get not references. I'll get portraits, requests, and commissions and things like that, where the best they could do is the best that they can do, and you get you try to do your best as an artist to create the pictures that they have in mind. Sometimes though you have to communicate, and I've had to communicate to people that, I'm sorry, I can't really work with this particular picture, right? Because if I can't see it, I can't draw it. And one of the beautiful things about creating portraits is that you want to be able to capture not just the likeness of a person, right? You want to be able to capture the feeling of that person. And so a lot of times your reference is going to dictate how well you'll be able to do that. Now, there are some people who are like masters of faces and things like that who don't necessarily need the best of the best when it comes to references. I just prefer to make life a lot easier for myself, you know, and ask for or look for the best possible references that I have available. Now, this is an example, excuse me again, of what I would not use, right, if I were drawing something from straight from reference as a portrait. Now, if we're looking at our reference box here, what you might notice is that this is a very blurry image, right? Now, of course, I can see his eyes, I can see his nose, I can see his mouth and things like that. But because it's a little bit blurry, some of the details are lost in the sauce. So if I'm going into if I was drawing this guy for a portrait commission, I would have a little bit of a challenge on my hands to sort of sharpen up different aspects of his face because the reference image or the beginning image is kind of blurry, right? So if you are contacting me, because I know some of you guys I have worked with, some of you guys may be thinking of working with me for a portrait. If that's something that you are thinking about having me do, right? I would just kindly ask that, make sure that the reference image is as good as you can get it, right? Because that makes my job a whole lot easier and it makes the final picture just that much better. All right, so what I've been doing is just sort of going back and forth. If this was paint, I'd just be moving the paint around. I am just adjusting some of the colors in his face. We're not really going for anything. Again, we're not going for the exact reference image. So I'm not too concerned about whether or not it looks like him. What I'm looking for as I am painting this along with the reference is where the light and shadows hit his face, right? Because the guy that I've drawn there are some similarities because I drew from this particular picture, but for the most part, he looks like a different person. So I just want to be sure that I know where light and shadow hits his face because this is a relatively neutrally lit image. But the light and shadow will help add form to his face so that it doesn't look like a flat sort of 2D image, right? Even though it is a 2D image. So we want to create the illusion of roundness, right? In order for us to do that, we have to sort of pay attention to where we place our light, where we place our shadow, and then also taking into consideration that the skin tone for this character is going to be a little bit different, quite different actually, from our reference piece. All right. So we're just moving things around, cleaning things up, smoothing things out. And I'm using sort of the reference, of course, but also I'm using my own experience to know what looks best and what doesn't so that I can clean certain things up. So like he has some light here because he has light on this side of his face. And we want to make sure that we can keep that somewhat consistent. And what I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit and I'm going to add some detailing lines. Nothing too fancy. I just need to mark where the inside of his mouth is so that if I turn off the sketch, which I will do here, it's not too bad, right? It's getting there. He's not super handsome, but we'll get him there. He'll have the skin of a baby before I'm done. So we're going to just put in these little lines, things like that, so that I know where to, where these things are. If in fact I do turn off the sketch, so his eyes are slightly open, right? So we want to make sure that we emphasize that, even though again this is going to be on a card, so you're not necessarily going to see a lot of these details. You're not, but thinking forward ahead, being a forward thinker, we want to make sure that if this gets blown up, right, as a canvas print, or if I decide to put this on a journal cover or something like that, that it'll be clear, it'll look good, it'll be crisp, all of those things. So I don't have to go back and tweak certain things just to make it look good. So if you're just joining me, I thank you so much again for stopping by. Whether you are watching this with me live or if you're watching the replay, I really, 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 really appreciate you being here. I know that was a lot of reallys, but I do. I appreciate you for being here. So if my voice is cracking, I do. I'm not gonna apologize because I'm sick, but it is cracking because I'm a little bit under the weather. So hopefully by this time next week I'll be back in business. It's been interesting. This is the I don't typically get sick, so that's number one, right? I don't typically get sick. This is the second time in 3 months that I've been sick. The first time was on my birthday in July, and I think we skipped live stream that week as well because I was like, well, it's my birthday, I don't want to. And I think my birthday fell on a Sunday, so I was like, well, I don't want to, be on live on my birthday and whatnot. So let's just wait. Man, I was sick that whole weekend. Was so we're back at it, but I just a sign to take better care of myself. Sometimes I get kind of caught up, just running business and household and all those different things that sometimes you lose track of. Taking care of your own health and being diligent in that way. And so it's just a reminder for me to do that. So, yeah, I hope you guys had a great Halloween. I hope you had a great Dia de los Muertos for those of you who celebrate and venerate your ancestors around this time of the year. I hope it was wonderful for you. For us, it rained that day. I think it rained. No, it rained on Halloween, and then yesterday it was okay. I didn't really get out. There's a festival that they usually have here in Memphis for Dia de los Muertos that I usually go to. I just, I ain't had the energy for it. I also didn't want to get anybody else sick, so we decided to stay in. But that is something that I thoroughly enjoy because, as someone who is very into ancestor veneration and things like that, I always find those customs, first of all, synchronous because a lot of African peoples also venerate their ancestors, and it's something that I resonate with and I do enjoy. All right, so we're still sort of moving paint around on this man's face. I'm noticing on our reference that there is light, and I'm going to circle real big. There is sort of a mid-tone light on this side of his face, right? So I want to make sure that I capture that. And there is more shadow than there is light here. So again, when you're using references, you want to kind of pay attention to where your light and shadows and things like that hit. Now, if you're studying from reference, that is something that if you are new to digital work or you just want to get better at certain things. For instance, for me, landscapes is one of those things that I would love to get better at. I feel like I'm getting better at, but I would definitely love to be even better at. If I am studying for references, then you sort of want to establish your goal, right? So are you studying your reference because you want to learn the composition? Do you want to study the reference because you want to figure out how different things were done? So sort of how different techniques and things like that were accomplished? Or do you want to study the light and shadow? You want to kind of set yourself a goal for what it is that you want to study when it comes to, studying, right? Excuse me. Again, I am under the weather and I don't know, I'm not normally this gross. I know it's kind of gross to me, but it is what it is. We've all had colds, right? All right. But anyhow, if you are looking for references to study, you want to make sure that you establish a goal for your studying, right? So when it comes time for me to begin to study landscapes, one of the things that I'm going to be looking at is form, right? So how the trees and things like that are laid out in a scene, how the colors fade from foreground to background. Those are some of the things that I want to take into consideration when I get into studying from reference. Now, when I was in high school and I was under Mrs. Owens or in Mrs. Owens' class, and this was the lady who sort of nurtured the artist in me. She had us copy a lot of, established artist work. And what that did was it taught us to look for how different things are made, right? So I'm hoping that because you guys get an opportunity to watch, for the ones of you who are interested in learning digital work, because I know there are a few of you here, I'm hoping that by watching me work, right, it'll sort of help you figure out how to best work within your own sort of art style. And when it comes to art style, I know a lot of people are uh, sort of not, I want to say obsessed with it, but I know a lot of people are very adamant about establishing an art style very early on in their artistic career. That is something that I would advise not doing, right? I mean, it's okay to have your style. So if you already have sort of a look and things like that that you know lean towards, then for sure go for it, right? But if you're not quite there, you don't necessarily have a signature yet, I would not advise focusing so much of your attention there at the beginning. That's something that will develop over time. It is inevitable. I remember having a conversation with an artist on Threads, and she was like, "Well, I just don't know. I can't seem to figure out my art style." And I'm like, "It's literally inevitable, right? The more you create, the more you develop, or the more you start to figure out things that you like to do in your art and things that you don't like to do. You'll have symbols and all kinds of things that you'll put into it, and it'll pretty much build on your artistic handwriting, right? I like to liken it to having an handwriting. Everyone has a very different handwriting, and it develops over time. It changes over time, and so too does your art style. Now, for me, one of the things that I tend to I've noticed of late, I would say maybe starting back in 20 I'm gonna say about 2018, 19 is that I started to use a lot of galaxies in my art. This is part of my art style, right? It is what I like to do. I also use a lot of purples and blues and things like that in my art style. So that sort of, not in my art style, but in my artwork. And that sort of lends itself to my art style. But that's something that developed over time. And as you grow and as you advance and things like that, again, it'll change over time. So his face is starting to look a little bit smoother. I'm going to turn off the sketch here in a bit, just so that we can see what details are missing. Because sometimes the sketch can give us a false read because it's line art already drawn into the picture. But he doesn't look too bad. He's getting there. Okay, he's doing all right. His skin tone is a little bit muddy to me, so we're gonna try to fix that up a bit. But he's looking pretty good. His blue shirt needs to kind of come down, so that's going to help us to shape his jawline because this blue shirt, which actually should be underneath him, is sitting sort of on top. But we can use that to sort of shape his face a little bit, and so he's not looking too bad, right? All right. Now again, I'm drawing on the wrong layer because when we started this live stream, I went into my skin layer to draw on him, and for whatever reason, I was drawing underneath the hair, and it was in the skin. So we're just gonna go with the flow. Now I am noticing that this area in his jawline looks a little funny to me, so we're gonna sharpen that up a bit, just a little bit. And based on our reference, he has locks, so he has shadows in his neck, so our illustration doesn't necessarily need that, but we're just going to sort of take into consideration that he will have a shadow under his ear. So yeah, when it comes to these sorts of pictures and things like that, where I get a chance to sort of puzzle together different references, it's always really enjoyable. It is one of the probably the best examples of me puzzling together references is going to be my page of pentacles. And the Page of Pentacles is, for those of you who may not be familiar, it is the image where I have the fairy who's sitting on the selenite plate, and there's the Lakshmi statue behind her. The crystals in it, let me see if I can pull it up. The crystals in that particular picture were on my table, so that was a reference that I was able to uh, develop myself, right? So I was like, hey, I like this selenite plate, and I had like a labradorite stone, and I had just different odds and ends. And I was like, well, let me set up a scene. Okay, I can see my Page of Pentacles sitting here on this particular thing. Let me find a image of a stack of coins and that kind of thing, and let me, make something happen. So I'm going to show you guys. I probably should have put this in the references, but I'm gonna show you guys what this looks like really quickly. Now I'm looking at my second monitor here, so if you see me looking over, I am looking at my second monitor. So let's see. I want to show you how this looked at the time that I was putting together random references, but I created a whole scene from it. So I'm gonna go here. And this might take a minute to load because it too is a pretty large file. But I do want to show you. I want to show you this because this is one of my favorite cards in this particular deck. So if you're new here, let me just give you a rundown of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So the Cosmic Gateways Tarot is a project I started in 2019. I did my first card in November of 2019. I did the first two that year, and then into 2020, I was able to develop quite a few more cards after that. It will consist of 78 illustrations, or 78 cards, I should say. So I am working to develop 78 illustrations. This is the largest project that I've ever undertaken. It will come with a guidebook, right? So just your standard tarot guidebook where we'll have some basic interpretations of all of the cards. You'll also have the option to purchase a companion book with it. Oh, I didn't push. Let me see. I'm waiting on it to open and I didn't hit open. All right. So it will also have the companion book with it. So one of the beautiful things about me doing these live streams is a lot of times I'll have art because I've been doing this for 5 years now. So I'll have art and illustrations that I've completed over the years, but I will forget like why I did certain things or like, why I made certain decisions. So to help combat that, this live stream helps because I get to share some of that information with you guys. It also helps that I have a notebook full of all of my research notes and all of my, thoughts and feelings and things like that. And so all of that information will be found in the companion book. So if after you get this, hey, okay, hey stars, versatile creations, great question, and I'll get to it in just a second. But in the companion book, you'll have all of that information. So having these live streams sort of helps me keep track of that. So for instance, at the Memphis Comic Expo, there was a guy, and if you're watching this, I'm so happy to see he had the best energy in the whole wide world, like top notch. But he was looking at the hermit, and he was like, "I'll give you a guess of my astrology sign based on the hermit." And because I had completed the hermit forever ago, I didn't remember which element it corresponded to. So for whatever reason in my mind, I was thinking air, but it was earth. So I ended up naming an air sign to guess his astrology, and I was all tangled up. But having sort of this sort of record, right, kind of helps me keep track. Another example of that is my Two of Pentacles. I think I had sketched that picture earlier this year, and I didn't get around to painting it until June of this year. No, not June, but sometime July, somewhere like that. Several months later, right? So being able to have these notes and have this sort of live record has been helpful. So that is the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. All right, now Stars Versatile Creations. How are you today? I want to answer your question. So she asked, I'm sorry, I don't know if you're a she here, them, they, or any of that. So excuse me, but they ask, I'm new to digital art. What program are you using? Awesome. Great question. So we are using Clip Studio Paint, specifically Clip Studio Paint EX on the desktop. Now, Clip Studio Paint has made things a little bit complicated when it comes to purchasing their artwork. But in a nutshell, they have two versions or two sort of types of program, right? So they have Clip Studio Paint Pro. They have Clip Studio Paint EX. You would think that Pro would have more sort of bells and whistles than EX, but EX has all of the sort of features and things that I was looking for in the digital programming. So I went with EX. Now it also has 3 versions of the program. So there's a version 1, there's a version 2, and there's a version 3. I am working in version 1. I've been working in version 1, I think, since 2019, right? So I switched from working primarily in Photoshop, which I did all of my digital paintings in Photoshop, and I switched over to Clip Studio Paint because some of the illustrators that I was, okay, female, awesome. Awesome stars versus that. I had a feeling, but I was like, I don't want to presume. But anyhow, yeah, so I just switched over from Photoshop because there were some illustrators that I really enjoyed who used Clip Studio, and they were doing arts quite similar to what I do. So I made the switch. Yes, I am on a PC. So yes, I'm on a PC and I have a 2 monitor setup. I currently work on a Huion Canvas Pro 24 4K tablet. So if you see me looking down, I'm actually looking and drawing directly on my screen. And this is my stylus pen here. And then I'm reading your chat on the second monitor. So that's how we are communicating. I'm also looking at a camera. So it's quite a little bit of a triangle here. But this is the Page of Pentacles. So earlier on, I was telling you guys about how to set up references and take pictures of references and things like that. This is how I did this, right? So a couple of things. The in this picture, and as soon as it finishes auto saving, I'll sort of give you a breakdown of this picture and where the references came from, and then how I was able to illustrate this image. And I'll kind of zoom in a bit, but for the moment, let's zoom out. All right. So the idea of this is that hey, okay, Star, give me 1 second. I'll get right to you. All right. So, the idea of this image was that the fairy is on this altar, and the question is she taking from the altar or is she giving back to the altar? If she blessing the altar, right? So, in my home, I have this particular Lakshmi statue without the flames that actually came from a different statue, and then I also have the two crystals, and so I pretty much set these three items, the Lakshmi statue and the two crystals, up on the table. And then I found another reference, which was, I think, a Shiva statue on an altar with a red cloth and a flower. That's sort of where the the flames behind Lakshmi went. I left them there because the picture needed it, and then also with that, I think was a, I don't remember if it had a bowl of grapes or if I added a bowl of grapes, but I was pretty much Frankensteining the reference image so that I could put together the picture, right? And it came together really well, and it became a very cohesive. I think it tells a really good story. So I'll show you guys some of the details in this picture. I love this picture. I don't recall how many hours I spent on this. Most of that was in this statue, if you can't already tell. But it was nice because I was able to sort of play with foreground and shadow by focusing on certain aspects of the statue specifically and blurring out certain aspects because I wanted the attention, even though this is the largest thing in the image, wanted the attention to be on our main character and the things that she was doing. All right. So Star says, I don't know any of that. Sorry, I don't know any of that. But I got an iPad Pro and I'm using Procreate. Awesome. Yeah, so Clip Studio is actually available on iPad. I don't know much about it. I don't use it. I do have an iPad. I don't have it on my iPad. I believe with the iPad version of Procreate, it works on a subscription. So that's just something to take into consideration. I feel like if you got Procreate, that's probably going to be your best option because you just pay one time and then you can just sort of become an expert in that. So she also says that I like your picture. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have you here. So yeah, that's a nutshell. This is sort of how we put together reference images to make a cohesive piece, right? Excuse me. And I have a cold again. If you guys are just joining me, have been under the weather quite a bit this week, and so I'm experiencing all of those things. All right, so our main character in our one of our main characters in our Two of Wands, he's coming together. He's looking a whole lot better from the way he looked when we started. So we're gonna just keep working on his face. Awesome Star says yes, it's been great. It is awesome. Procreate is a really good program. My only thing with Procreate is that I guess because I'm used to, you become used to what you're used to. I've had a hard time sort of getting used to the shortcuts. So when you're in digital illustration, shortcuts are going to be your best friend, right? So moving from Photoshop into Clip Studio, you get used to certain shortcut keys. If I hit B, I know I'm gonna get a brush. If I, hit R, I know I'm gonna rotate and things like that. So you want to make sure that you are very familiar with the shortcuts because it's going to save you a ton of time. So earlier I showed the image of the Baron Sumdy picture that we did a couple weeks ago, or that I completed a couple of weeks ago. And within it, there was a whole, image, a whole portrait. And because it took me so long to do, well, it only took me 5, I won't say it took me so long because I spent 40 hours or more on illustration. So it took me about 5 hours to do, right? But a lot of that is credited to being able or being familiar with the shortcut keys when it comes to your programming, right? So if you have Procreate, I highly encourage you to sort of learn it. Yeah, it says you've been learning it for 3 weeks. That's nice. That's awesome. So you're doing awesome. So yeah, I use Procreate pretty much for sketching. I think that's pretty much the sort of where I end with Procreate. I have considered though, because I know that you can get fully like fleshed out illustrations. I have been thinking about sitting down one of these days and like actually doing an entire picture in Procreate. I have not done it yet. I've done inkings, I've done again sketches, I've designed logos and things like that. Not like rendered them, but like sketched out the logo design. So I've done a lot of that in Procreate, but I haven't done a full illustration yet. And I was actually that actually crossed my mind not long ago. Maybe I should give it a go and try it out. Again, my thing is that I guess because I've been at this for a really, really long time, it's one of those things where it's like I don't know how much I want to invest in learning it, but I do enjoy watching people work and procreate. Yes, the shortcuts are definitely helpful. They're a clutch. So again, like there's been times where I've had illustrations, and the Page of Pentacles is probably one such illustration where I've spent like 40 hours on an illustration. And when I say 40 hours, I think our camera has frozen, so hopefully it'll pick back up here in a second. But hopefully you guys can still hear me. But I've spent like 40 hours on an illustration, and it would have been way longer if I had to go through all of the menu settings and things like that to find, okay, well, let me find where the brush is and let me find where this and that and third is, as opposed to, knowing how to undo, how to, pull up certain items and things like that that I'll need to get the job done. So, yeah, if you're into digital work, if you're starting to learn it, if you're wanting to learn it, your shortcuts are going to be your best buddy. Now, one of the beautiful things about Clip Studio Paint, specifically the desktop version, is that we actually have a remote control. So this is nice because I can actually program all of the buttons and things like that to, access different menu options, to do different things, and it's completely customizable, and that sort of helps a whole lot when it comes to developing shortcuts. But I usually use my keyboard, which I have right below my monitor. All right, so Star says that she follows videos Procreate on YouTube. Awesome, yeah. YouTube is a wellspring has a wellspring of information when it comes to all of this digital illustration and things like that. When I was in school, I think I want to say, okay, so I started my digital art journey somewhere in between 2006 and 2008, and I have a hard time nailing down the date because it was somewhere in there, right? But there wasn't a lot of people teaching sort of digital artwork, so a lot of it was self-taught. But once YouTube and things like that became much more popular, you had more access to information, and that helped me quite a lot in terms of learning the programming. Now, as far as being an artist and learning how to draw and things like that, I have to credit a little bit of that to my formal education. I don't think that you have to have a formal education to be an artist or to do any of that. I absolutely don't. And last week, I think it was last week, I told the story of how when I was in college at the University of Tennessee, I had to go through a program or I had to go through a process where I had to take a certain class and go through like a portfolio review type of thing to be for it to be determined as whether or not I would get into the graphic design program. And at the time, there were two classes I had to take. For the first class, I had an internship somewhere else, so I wasn't there for that first class. So I took the second class, and I actually was denied entry into the graphic design program. And I find it funny because you can learn to do anything, right? And so to have someone to say whether or not you should or shouldn't be in a program, whether you should or shouldn't be an artist, is kind of ludicrous because why shouldn't you, right? So that's sort of one of the things that I didn't necessarily struggle with. I will say that was one of the things I always found odd about art school, because art is one of those things that is pretty subjective, right? Now, unless we're talking about a certain technique, by all means, right? If we're talking about a certain technique and you're being graded and judged based on a certain technique, then absolutely. But in terms of determining whether or not you're an artist because, I don't know. But anyhow, as I'm talking about Procreate, YouTube tutorials, they show you how to use the program, all the shortcuts. Very nice. Yeah, again, YouTube has lots and lots of information about different things. So that's really awesome. And maybe one of these days again, because I don't, like I said, I don't really know if I have the patience to learn. But I do want to do like a full, fleshed out video not a video, but a full fleshed out illustration in Procreate. So I'll definitely be trying out some of those things. I know that when I have used Procreate and I'm like, well, how the heck do I do certain things? I'll go straight to YouTube. So that's very much something that I do. But yeah, Clip Studio Paint is just my program of choice, right? And I do use a desktop, um, and I use a pen display tablet. All right, so it looks like our character's face is getting a little bit better. I am going to smooth out his brow because it's looking kind of harsh, looking pretty harsh. And he's not necessarily frowning, but he is concentrating. But we don't really want this harsh line in his brow too much. So again, when I'm creating the digital illustration, I'm not using a ton of brushes. I don't need to use a ton of brushes, right? I use a round brush. I usually use a textured, like a chalk brush, and then I'll use my smudge tool unless I'm doing something like foliage and things like that. And of course I have, or stars. I have certain specialty brushes for those sorts of things. But by and by, I typically use, pretty standard round brushes and things like that. All right, so I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm checking my second monitor because it gives me a different point of view. But I am going to zoom out to see that his face reads, and there aren't any like super harsh lines. And I'm going to actually smoothen some more of this out from a distance so that his face is a little bit softer. And by softer, I don't mean like more feminine, but actually like he doesn't have these hard shadow lines because our reference image doesn't have those hard shadow lines. And then we might move over to and he looks pretty okay. I don't think there's much I would do to him. Maybe I would adjust the coloring of him. He does look a little bit he looks ashy. I can't lie to you, he looks a little ashy. He looks a little ashy, and I'm noticing that there is a little bit of a disconnect between his head and his neck. And I don't necessarily like how that looks. So we're gonna soften that up and bring that in so that it doesn't look like his head's just sort of sitting on the neck, but it is actually joined to his neck. All right. So we're just making some little things. And again, today, because I'm not feeling 100%, we're just doing a couple of very small, details and making sure that our faces are fleshed out. So that's been the goal of today's live stream. Now, I'm going to rename this layer. Actually, I'm going to join this layer to, actually, you know what, before I do, let me do this. So we're on the hair layer, which means that his hair is going to be connected. You know what? Never mind. I'm talking out loud, talking to myself out loud. But what I'm going to do is merge my skin layer and my hair layer together. And I'm merging that in the layers panel, which is right above me here. And I am going to not merge the whole thing. We don't want to do that. But we do want to merge those two particular layers. And then I'm going to add the details of his hair on top of that. And this is where my texture brush is going to come in. So I have his hair kind of brown. Typically, I don't know why, but I usually, if I'm doing like dark hair, I tend to go blue. It gives me a much darker look. So we're going to start with blue. And then if I decide that I want to change this to brown, then I can do that. But we're just going to bring his afro in a little bit and add details and a little bit of lighting, keeping in mind that in our reference, the left side of his, actually it'll be his right, the right side of his face has a little bit of light, and the left side also has a little bit of light. And then we're easing up on an hour, so I think that we might call it here in a bit. But again, if you're watching this live, if you're watching the replay, I thoroughly appreciate you for being here. That is not what I want to do. But what I will do and say is if you are enjoying this live stream, y'all know how YouTube works. I know this isn't your first YouTube video, right? So if you are enjoying this live stream and you are enjoying hearing the commentary as we work on the Two of Wands from the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, if you just like listening to me, even though my voice is cracking, if you if you dig what's going on over here, right? Hit the thumbs up button. I want you to do that for me. That does me a huge favor. And I used to be like, man, people say that, and it probably doesn't matter, but it does. And here's why. We're all familiar with the algorithm, right? You know that all of our social media platforms work based on an algorithm, and they show you things based on what you interact with. But they also show people who interact with the same sorts of things, the things that you interact with, right? So if you like this particular live stream, if you're having a great time, and if you think that other people will enjoy watching the Paint With Me lives, by all means, please hit the thumbs up. That is the easiest way to support this channel. If you are feeling generous and you want to buy me a bag of cough drops, there is a link in the description which says buy me a coffee. I will promise you that that coffee money will go toward some cough medicine. Otherwise, there are things that you can purchase within my shop. And earlier, I did mention, and I want to mention this again because I kind of want you guys' opinions on this. So once upon a time, I had lots and lots of 11 by 17-inch prints. That is the size print that I usually use in in-person events. It's like a poster, right? So I had that size print available on my shop, but I did take it out in favor for the canvas prints. Now I do know that canvas prints can be expensive for a few people, right? It could be it's an investment. You're collecting artwork. It is definitely an investment. So if you would like to have smaller, more accessibly priced prints, and that is something that you're interested in, let me know. I just been kind of toying around with the idea, but I would love to hear from you because that would help me sort of make the decision to make the artwork much more accessible to a larger audience. Otherwise, we'll probably keep the canvas prints available. And the canvas prints, and I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Which way am I pointing? That way. That is one of the canvas prints. That is the Hermit, and that is I think 20. I think it's a 20 by 30. It's a 20 by 30 canvas print. And our camera is frozen again, so it might be time for me to start wrapping up. But that is a 20 by 30 canvas print, and it is framed. And then next to it on the other side, where am I going? This way, and here is a second canvas print. So we have all kinds of canvas prints specifically of the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So if you like the images and you like the imagery from the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, you want to have that in your home or your office space or your business, they are available for sale on my website. And all of that will be linked in the description below. So we're going to wrap it up here. I think that we've got quite a lot done to his face, which I'm really happy about. I think that I was able to share through the cracking of my voice quite a lot of information that I hope you all found helpful. And I hope that this week you all have a wonderful, creative, and prosperous week. I hope that you have the week and the days that you deserve and that you dream of. And I hope that, you all have an all around good time. Please take not better care, but please take good care of yourself. Please take care of yourself. Please be kind to your friends and people around you. Kindness goes a long way. And again, if you're watching this live or if you're watching this on the replay, I appreciate you for being here. I thank you so, so much for joining me. And next week, we'll be back at it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, within the next week, I'll have a lot more done to this picture so that we'll sort of get to move on. I do have an idea, and I don't know if you guys will make it to this part in the live stream if you're watching the replay. I hope you do. But I have an idea of going back through my YouTube channel and sort of watching some of the old artwork so that I can sort of explain some of the different techniques when it comes to digital painting from the perspective of what I used to do in my digital artwork. So I thought that would be fun. A lot of the videos I have not seen in years. So if there's something you'd be interested in, maybe there's something that we'll do one of these weeks, probably the week after we finish up this particular card, because this is the last of the twos. So without further ado, I thank you so much again for watching. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up. And if you like content and want to be notified anytime I go live or post a new video, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified anytime I go live or anytime I post a video. I am going to go get myself some rest. I hope you all get some rest as well. And again, have a great, lovely week. Thank you so much again for watching. And until next time, peace.